Welcome to Unveiling, where we highlight the stories of individuals who have achieved good success in Christ. My name is Adise Jonas Murphy, and I have the privilege of re-welcoming Dr. Greg Baldeo to sit. Now, if you were tuned into part one or episode of part one with Dr. Greg, you would have recognized that you learned so much more about him. He's not just the minister or the preacher in the pulpit. He's not just evangelist, but we have started to see him as educator. We've started to see him as entrepreneur. We've started to see him as strategist, as author. And in this part two episode, we're going to be delving into, of course, his academic journey, his later academic journey, and how that also affected and influenced who he has become today. The educator, the strategist, and of course, the minister par excellence. Dr. Greg, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Let's just do a quick recap for our viewers who didn't get a chance to see part one. So you talked to us about your formative years, how you grew up in Portmore. You're the last of 6 children. And of course, you took us on your academic journey, failing the common entrance 3 times. Yeah.
Yes.
But you matriculated into the Jose Marti Technical High School, where you continued your journey there, dropped out of high school, and of course started your own business. You started your own business as 15, 16 years old. You started your first business.
Yes.
Little did you know that God was preparing you through the failures, through the challenges, through, even the feelings of isolation that you had. He was preparing you for something greater. You took us also on the journey of migrating to Canada, to Florida first, traveling to Florida, meeting your wife, and then eventually both of you migrating to Canada, where the family grew. You had children, you went back to school, went on your religion journey, and you came back to Jamaica to give back, serving as a pastor in the Mile Gully and Mandeville districts, being called as youth director of the Central Conference. Am I getting it right so
You're
far? I'm doing well?
perfect. You're on point.
Wonderful. OSE, of course, many of you can say that OSE from the Central Jamaica Conference has been an impactful program. Yes, this was originated from Dr. Greg Baldeo's time at the Central Jamaica Conference. So, Pastor, that's where we left off. You were talking to us about your time in Jamaica and how God used you to use the 3 tenets of who He's called you to be: education, ministry, that's spirituality, and also entrepreneurship, to build up His cause, to advance His cause. So Mandeville ended. You went to CJC, Central Jamaica Conference, to serve. You did your part there, but then you left and went to Canada.
Right.
What happened at that point?
So, a number of things were happening at that point. I wanted to look at how organizations really function and how do they become effective. So I was very interested in that, and I thought, why not study that doing my doctoral studies? But then there were some things that were happening personal as well, and we decided it was time for us to go. So let me explain. My eldest son worked really hard. He passed his, was it PEP?
It would have been, no, it was GSAT.
GSAT. That's it. Yes. He passed his GSAT, and he wasn't like his father. He, at his first go, top boy across Manchester. And passed for Manchester High.
Wow.
But of course, I'm going to send him to
Victor Dixon
Adventist Institution. And I did not recognize how that affected him. It didn't make sense for him. And then he had some very creative teachers at the prep school. And at the high school, something shifted. And so I started realizing some behavioral issues. I started realizing his grades dropped. And then my second son, by the time he did GSAT, he just did.
Right.
It was like, what's the sense?
Right.
It's not making sense for me. And in any case, I'm going to Victor Dixon, so I don't have to work hard. So I started seeing a shift in my boys. And here am I, the director of youth. But my boys weren't, they were growing up, they were teenagers. And I always promised that when they were about to go to university, we'd have the conversation about returning to Canada. So all that was happening, and as a family, we sat down, doing well in Jamaica. I enjoyed the time that I had there. I wasn't ready to leave, but my family needed me. And so I decided this is the opportunity to now minister to my family, to ensure that my boys understand that while I am trying to save others, that I'm there for them.
So let's put a plug right here, because this is a relevant and real issue that ministerial families contend with. What issue am I talking about? I'm talking about the alignment between serving others and serving your own family, right? So ensuring that pretty much your walk is your walk and your talk is your talk. So talk to us about that part there. And I want to delve a little bit into the life of the ministerial family right now, just a bit. You mentioned having to show up for your family. How difficult is that at times? You're busy serving the public. We know how demanding ministry is, not just in the North American context, but in the Jamaican context. Might I just say, we know what it's like to have 7 churches, Pastor.
Yes.
We know what it's like to have had 5 churches, to have a school that's attached to a church as well. So talk to me about that alignment between living the public life and also ensuring you minister to your family in private.
So I see things a little different because, again, God had set me up to be at my core a strategist. So I, as much as ministry may be demanding, from a strategic perspective, I was able to manage ministry, manage doing business, taking care of my family. That wasn't the issue. The issue was, as my boys were growing up, they needed something different. And I think it was from an educational standpoint. It wasn't making sense for them. And that was coming out in their behavior. They were always there with us. We're a ministerial family, so they were always there with me, doing whatever we're doing with church, whatever we're doing with directorship of the youth in Central. They were always there. But they weren't there mentally. And the behavior shifted. So therefore I thought, you know what? My first responsibility is to them. Let's change the environment. And I just wanted to ensure that we understand how key environment is. Okay? Because sometimes we believe we're stuck in one place.
Yes.
And we believe that we're not moving and life is not getting from A to B or from B to A, whatever that looks like. But our environment contributes to that, the space that we're in. So I decided, let's have the conversation. We had the conversation. They said, yes, we want to go finish high school in Canada and to go to university in Canada. And so I applied for my doctoral program, got through, and we
headed off to Canada.
At that time now, I went straight into teaching full-time at the university and doing my doctorate while they were doing finishing up high school and going into college. So I taught in the business department, the religion department, and communication. At my alma mater that I did my undergrad at while doing my doctoral program.
And how did that period of time shape you in terms of the exposure you had to now being an educator? You're solely in the field of education. Did you discover your passion in this area at that point?
So the passion was always there. As I said, God had planted the seed
Right.
in nature with the trees.
Speaking,
right?
teaching.
Yeah, I was teaching the trees and whopping their leaves off. And I was also preaching to the trees.
Yes.
So there was something inside of me. But I think what really pulled me further is, how do I help education to be relevant, to make sense? Because that's what it didn't do for me. It didn't make sense. So how do I now use my influence to influence the system so that those that are in education or trying to get an education can find relevancy? And so that's when I went into the classroom at the university. And I give you a funny story to show you, talk to you about relevance. I remember we had this lecture, and I went into this lecture that had a number of AV multimedia, and I saw a whiteboard and I saw a smart board.
Mercy.
I had no idea what these. I thought they were all chartboards, right? And I remember I took a permanent marker
Oh Lord.
and started writing on the smart board.
Oh my.
And I just started hearing chuckles. And I looked around, and one kind student said, "Professor, I don't think what you're doing you should." And I use that as a movement for that class, that I'm not just here to teach you, I'm here to learn from you. But my job was to make the learning relevant. And I got exposure in higher ed. I worked with the vice president of academics. I worked with developing the first EDI.
What's that?
Equity and inclusion at the school. And I worked on different course developments in COVID. I was instrumental in bringing a number of the classes and the courses from in person to asynchronous and synchronous
learning modes.
Yes.
Wonderful. So and as you're talking about your experiences again and your levels of exposure, I'm seeing how again these are preparatory for what God has in store for you. But we talk about the Canada experience, but then you also spent some time in the United States.
Right.
So you served as a superintendent of schools in the Northeastern Conference.
Yes.
Tell me about that time. And this is now in the Adventist education system.
Right.
So what were the differences that you noted between government, public, and the Adventist system? And what were some of the advancements that you were able to make through your leadership?
Right. There are a number of things that happened that I've documented in the book, Something Better.
Right.
Ellen White says that something better ought to be our educational watchword. And this speaks to a continuous learning and improvement. Okay. When I read the book Education and I look at the foundation of what Ellen White envisioned for our school system, it gets my blood boiling because I'm ready to go into it full speed, understanding that it brings business, spirituality,
and
academics together. So she speaks about industries, and a lot of people believe that it's industries as it relates to farming.
Right.
But she speaks definitively about a student not only learning from an academic standpoint, but should use head, heart, and hands. Okay? And in the book of evangelism, she speaks about using new methods. Okay? Relevancy. Relevancy. So I was invited to come to Northeastern. God set this up in ways that I didn't understand. I met the leader or leaders of Northeastern Conference at the time while pastoring in Mandeville. And when I came to, a matter of fact, at Mandeville, he said to me, I would love you to be Northeastern. And I said, oh no, I'll never go to New York.
Yeah.
When I came to do my doctorate and was teaching, I got a call, and the call said, professor and pastor. I don't want the professor nor I want the pastor.
Oh, wow.
Would you come over? And I said, no, I'm good where I'm at. Boys are settled. But I felt God pulling me. I felt him pulling. And so I said, all right, let's see how this works. Spend a little time in New York, and then they asked me to be the superintendent of schools. When we looked at that system, you had schools that were failing. They were hardly making payroll. Roofs were leaking. The place was in deplorable condition. And I sat with the chairman at the time, and we had a frank discussion, and we said we cannot continue like this. He had some ideas, I had some ideas, and I said we gotta build a strategic system. We gotta look at what's happening in the system, and where it concerned with schools that are failing. Can we really say they are Adventist schools? Because Adventist schools should never fail. Adventist schools should never just be looking at one paycheck to the other.
Right.
Adventist schools should not just be looking at how do we get students getting A. That's not Adventist education. Adventist education looks at the total man, preparing young minds for relevant living here
and for the world to come.
You
got it.
And that is not just words that you repeat.
Yeah.
That must be embedded in the pedagogy. That must be embedded in the administration of the system. So we looked first at what has been happening and where we want to go. We looked at the system and how it was failing, and how it was failing students, and how we were failing God.
My. Let's just, I have to, that one really hit me deep, because very rarely do we connect the educational realities to a spiritual stewardship experience.
That's what it is. We are called to be stewards of the system that he has given unto us.
So if the system is failing, we're failing God.
Of course we are.
Mercy.
So when you look at any organization, okay, you look at a strategy that you are using, and strategy is making intentional, connected decisions so you can win. You got to look at the system in general, and you got to look at the structure of that system. The question to ask is, are we running a church institution that provide academics? Or are we running an academic institution that enhances the mission? I argue that we ought to do the latter. The way you operate a church
is different,
and the systems you use in a church cannot be the same that you use in an academic institution. Yet, that academic institution must enhance the mission and carry the mission forward.
And that's why Ellen White says the work of education and redemption
Has to be one. Has to be one. So as we looked at it, we were declining in that institution for 7 years decline. And we came in and put in a strategic plan.
Mercy.
We merged some schools and we brought the system into more of a centralized system, taking off some of the burdens from principals.
Right.
And looked at how do we position the school from a business standpoint so that we're not just talking about, payroll can't be met and classrooms don't look like what they ought to look now. And what I did at Central Jamaica Conference, again, at each part of my life, I'm moving from beating those trees, teaching them, preaching to them,
Selling to them.
and selling to them. And I looked at how do we become relevant. One of the first thing is that we need to look at technology within the school.
My Lord, you
So
said it. You
so
said
there
it.
were teachers and principals that said, Superintendent, we cannot have the students having their phones. It's a major issue. I said, you are making it a major issue. I said, our job is to educate how it ought to be used. So when they come to school, bring your phones.
My.
But there is a time for it. Okay? There's a time when you are allowed to be on your phone and a time when you are not
Right.
allowed to be on your phone. Okay? And the students, they worked with that. So we got every student a technological device, whether a tablet or a laptop. And every classroom was fitted with a smart board. That same smart board that I didn't know
that
about.
you wrote on with
right?
the marker.
Yeah, that and after the first year, into our second year as superintendent, we reversed a 5 to 7 year trend of decline.
Mercy. Say that one more time. In how many years you reversed it?
The second year going in, we reversed
5 to
a
7 year
5 to
decline?
7 year decline. Okay? We garnered over $4 million in that first year.
Pastor, how do I get you on my team?
I'm on your team.
Okay, all right. I'm just saying. I'm
on your team.
I'm
You
just
see,
saying.
what is needed is bold leadership, strategic insight, and sustainable alignment.
So let's go back to the middle one you mentioned, strategic alignment, strategic, that framework. Why do we not embrace that so much we may embrace it in thought, but in terms of the practicality and it being expressed, and I'm talking about our local settings as a church and even perhaps to maybe at the conference levels, that strategic framework is not as visible at times.
Right.
What do you think?
The right person needs to be riding the horse.
Mercy. So we're putting square pegs in round holes?
Square pegs in round holes. And when you look at education in general, or you look at organizational effectiveness, and that's one of my research areas, organizational effectiveness, you're looking at ensuring that your structure and your system can carry your strategy. When you talk about the structure and your system, you're also talking about the people. Higher head, right across the board, is not looking to academicians to fill leadership roles right now. Okay? That's a traditional way of looking at persons to lead academic institutions.
Right.
You gotta have, again, remember I said, I think it was in part one, that we spoke about every school has what is called academics. That's what makes you a school.
Right.
But you gotta have, for sustainability, the business acumen that's gonna bring you through. And for faith-based and Adventist education, the spiritual has to be there. And these three have to walk together. There must be that convergence of these three working together to go forward. Not everyone can do this because some persons are just thinking from an academic standpoint. Some
or
persons
from just a spiritual
from
standpoint.
a spiritual standpoint.
Rarely do we have the business part.
Rarely
That's
does
true.
the business section comes in.
It's rare, because there is this thought, and mind you too, my background is working with the Seventh-day Adventist structure.
Right.
And so I understand sometimes the fear, even at the local level, we talk about church schools and, oh no, we shouldn't, the business, with the mark of the beast is upon us. The mark of the beast? We're running an academic institution that enhances the mission of Christ. And so there has to be, as Doc says, a business tripartite arm that's running alongside the spiritual and academics. But Bishop, I want to get into the books before we run out of time, right? So which one do you want us to start with? I'll give you, we have some, and let me take these two from around this side. We have a lot of books here today. Doc has used a lot of words over the years to put on paper. Let me start with this one. This one is CALM. It's called CALM, and it's the workbook for creating pronounce that word.
Cross-generational.
Why am I having issues with generational? Cross-generational churches. What is CALM about, and what was the inspiration behind CALM?
So, as I told you earlier, I was looking at how do we get organizations to be effective?
Right.
And in that research, I found out that in 2020, we would have had, for the very first time, 5 generations living and working together. Which switched my focus from just the plain organizational effectiveness to exploring a little bit more of how these generations coexist for effectiveness.
Mercy.
And then I also looked at, okay, so that's from a business standpoint. But what about the church? Because I've had so much issues. And I was one of them that was talking about intergenerational model.
Yes.
And for, the old people, they need to go sit down and give the young people a chance.
Or the young people might be saying, let's use the technology, and the older ones say, it's satanic and stuff like that.
Exactly. In my research, I found out that both methods are incorrect.
Tell me.
We need a cross-pollination for there to be effective mission outputs. A cross-pollination means that I need you, that's older, the traditionalists need the Gen Z needs a baby boomer, and the Gen X needs a millennial, and vice versa.
I'm getting excited. So how?
What is happening is that we are putting each other against each other. So your time is not yet, so sit and wait. This is not how we do things.
Right.
So you sit and wait. And that's happening not only in a church setting, but in general organizations, right? Because now you have all these generations that are coming and they look at life different. Their values are different. Their thought processes are different. How they accomplish the outcome, it's different. And they approach life differently. So I coined cross-generational effectiveness, cross-generational ministry, meaning that you gotta cross each of the generations for you to produce. I need to learn from the alpha that's coming. and the alpha needs to learn from me, the Gen X.
So how do we put that in practicality now, in
Right.
practical sense?
And this is where these
The books.
manuals come from.
Right.
Calm is true. It means conversation, awareness, love, and mutual respect.
Right. So this is is it the part 2? Because both are workbooks, right?
No, this is a facilitator's guide to guide what happens, and then you have the workbook, and then you have a reader for persons to understand what generations are and what that looks like.
Right, right. So we're talking about the issues with, young people leaving the church and, so many just challenges found within the place of worship, the church space of worship. Calm is designed to help you. I like the words. I like the acronym, and I like the name itself.
Right.
Calm. Hear that? Calm. So we want you to get your copy today. These are located on Amazon, Bishop.
That's located on Amazon. It's also located on my personal website, drgregbaldeo.com.
Wonderful. So that's Calm. If you're interested in introducing a generational a cross-generational approach to your space of worship, place of worship, you can check out Dr. Greg Baldeo's books.
And if you want to introduce within your business, it's also right here. So that's a business book for business organizations, how to be generationally effective so that your KPIs can be achieved.
Wonderful.
So that your strategy that you're using can be achieved within your business.
All right. So Calm is made just for you, whether you're in church or whether you are in business. But I want to go to, and I'm so sorry I didn't start with my dream,
Okay.
This one, of course, this was co-authored by the couple. So this is by Donette and Greg.
Yes.
Tell us about the inspiration behind My Dream, even though you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but you can go ahead.
I think I would send our persons who are watching to go watch episode 1. Right? Part 1 of this episode, because it delves into actually not having anything. Not realizing where you are, what you can be, but all you have is a dream. All you have is a thought. And I am saying, believe in your dream, because dreams do come true.
Bishop, for some people, you spoke about environment earlier and how important environment is in shaping the individual. There are some individuals who have a dream, but their environment constantly puts them down. They have a dream. Some people, I think about they're now young men, but at the time they were boys growing up in Denham Town, Kingston, Trenchtown. That's the ghetto, right, of Kingston, the inner city communities of Kingston. And they had dreams, but they didn't know how they would get out.
Absolutely.
Of the gunfire each morning. They had very, very adaptable spirits, and they were Christians. And so it took a gentleman who saw himself in them to invest in them. They didn't have money, right? And was able to pull them out of the situation. And there's so many others like that watching right now. How does one, now they have the dream, but how do they push irrespective of their environment?
The book, I believe in My Dream, outline first having that vision where you want to go. Understanding how you make that vision a reality.
Right.
Because you can have the dream, have the vision, but you don't know how to put it in place, right? Education is one of those steps. I thought I could have done it without education. But you need to educate yourself. Your mindset needs to change. The way you see things need to change. And you need to develop a strategic mindset. Strategy, I'm going to say it again, is making intentional, connected decisions so that you can win. There are times that we say we want X, but we're not intentional in getting the X, and our life is not connected. Okay? So I want to buy a new car, but I am buying the latest shoes, I'm buying the latest suit, I'm going to the latest parties, or
Right.
I'm doing whatever. I'm not moving toward that car that I want to buy. My life is not connected. It's not aligned. It's not strategic. Strategy is a life skill that one must have in order to win at their life.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's a spiritual component in all of that. But you could pray until you're blue in the face unless you follow the precepts and the principles that are outlined in the scripture, which God is a strategic
Mercy.
God.
Yes. Tell us.
Right? You will not achieve anything. So there must be some form of vision and strategy and making it a life skill in your life. And that's what this books help you to understand.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. This is also available on Amazon. You can get it today. Go to Amazon.com, search for My Dream. I'm not talking about, who sing that one again in Jamaica? My Dream is not that dream.
I know who it is, but is it Chronics?
I think it's Chronics, but I don't want to embarrass myself.
Yes.
So if it is, well, thank God. If not, then you know who we're talking about, right? But so My Dream is available on Amazon, done by Donette and Greg. And, I want to go over, I'm going to leave Everyday Strategies to last.
Okay.
Let's go into something better. This is a strategic advancement model for Adventist education.
Yes.
So every household should have one of this. And I'm going now specifically to speak about my Seventh-day Adventist households. Every Adventist household should have a copy of this book. Just how important is something better? Dr. Greg, tell us.
We have been preserving a model that no longer exists.
Ooh.
We have been educating a generation that cannot recognize the world in which we are preparing them for. SAM, Strategic Advancement Model, basically speaks to using business, academics, and mission and bringing those together in unison for a better system that will function relevantly for individuals to achieve their desired outcomes. It speaks to governance. It speaks to administrators. It speaks to alumni. It speaks to parents. It speaks to students.
I'm looking here at page 23 of Something Better, right? And I want to read just a few portions. Let me start up top and then I'll jump down the bottom. So it says, if our schools are to be reclaimed, our boards must be thoroughly retained. Okay, I'm farsighted. Governance is not about control, it is about stewardship, and the effectiveness of our mission depends on how well we govern by stewarding well what God has entrusted to us. Listen to this. Too often, education is treated as a department rather than a driving force behind the church's entire mission. It might be time to assess why mostly evangelism is funded, but education is budgeted. I want you to just expand on this some more, Pastor. Education being treated as a department rather than a driving force behind the church's mission. Why the disparity in reality when the servant of the Lord clearly admonishes and encourages that both are one?
So you walk through any Adventist institution, what you're going to find are some committed individuals working too hard, giving more than what they can or what they have to accomplish tasks that seems utterly impossible.
Right.
And the reason for this is when you're just swimming upstream, the system And the model that's being used today is not for this world nor for this generation. And therefore, you're working so hard, but you're not achieving what you need to achieve. When you look at the strategic advancement model, you're looking at how you design a new structure and system, but not forgetting the principle of what that Adventist education was built on. You're looking at the three areas that I spoke about: business, academics, and spiritual, walking together.
Right.
But you're also looking at your governance, okay? As superintendent of schools, I often said to the chairman of my board, I said, Chairman, let me understand the outcome that the board needs and leave me alone to give you the outcome. Okay? My job is to understand where we want to go, look at the gaps, fill those gaps, put the right people in the seats, provide the resources that they need for them to be successful, and ensure that the philosophy of what Adventist education is, my philosophy of education, period, is every student can learn, every student must learn, faculty must find the key to unlock that learning.
But Bishop, many departments, many institutions, many organizations struggle with financial resources, meager resources. They want to put the right people in the right places. They just don't have the budget for it. How do we get that point?
Because we are fixing holes in the roof when we need to take the entire roof off. Now listen, I don't believe in just presenting a balanced budget.
I see.
I was chairman of a K-8 school. And when I became chairman, they would take things to the board about where it needs to be painted, which roof is leaking, which trip the school is making. How are we sitting together as a board and looking from a strategic perspective of where we're taking the school? These are a result of patching what needs greater work. If you keep patching, you're going to continue patching for the rest of your life.
I see.
Okay? So one, as the leader must be able to find the resources.
Yes.
A leader must be able to fundraise. A leader must be able to sit and speak to individuals who will be able to buy or come behind the vision. And listen, money follows vision.
Mercy.
I've never ever worked at an institution, right? And we didn't explore this, but I was a change management professional for the largest crown corporation in the government of Canada. Okay? Vision, money runs after it.
I think you made in excess of how much did you raise? The 4 million was what? Was it for the schools?
Yes, absolutely. That was what gave every student a device. That was what outfitted every classroom with smart boards.
Devices.
That was what made classrooms look different. We can't be ministering to Gen Zs and alphas that are coming with chalkboards, but we can't do it in a traditional setting where you have chairs and whatever. So we had classrooms that were designed as a cafe, classrooms that were designed as comfort areas and unique spaces. And you may say, yes, but that's all good for a elementary school. It's the same thing at the university.
Yes.
It needs to be relevant to the students that are there. We're in an AI age, but AI is not our strongest challenge. Our strongest challenge is strategic relevancy. How do we make this relevant? And how do we do, as Ellen White has said and stated, that the industries, where are the persons that are scaling industries? Where are the entrepreneurs? Where are the students' minds that we are helping to build entrepreneurial mindsets? Okay, I don't care what study you're in. What are you creating? So when you leave a institution, an Adventist institution,
My Lord.
an Adventist institution, you're not dependent on the world to give you a job, but you already know how to do a business plan, a strategic plan, and how to look at building a business for yourself. You talk about Mark of the Beast, and you talk about where the world is going. Adventist education. I'm getting a little passionate.
I realize.
I'm getting a little passionate.
And we only have 5 minutes left. We only have 5 minutes left, Bishop. And if we don't end in 5, we'll have to go to a part 3.
As a people who are called to make a difference, we need to follow a strategic God who has given us strategic principles in His Word and in the writings of the prophetess. And we need to look at the model that we're using. And this is not just for schools, it's also for churches.
So, one thing that resonated from everything you said, I want to just sum it up, especially to somebody who may just be coming on. Just want to remind you, this is Unveiling. My name is Adise Jonas Murphy. I'm speaking with Dr. Greg Baldeo, strategist at heart, educator, and of course, minister of the gospel. But Pastor, you said, if we keep patching roofs, we'll keep patching for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
My admonishment to you, my admonition is, do not be a patcher. And you can tweet that. Do not be a patcher, but be a strategist. And I want to end by looking at the everyday strategist. Could you hand that one? Thank you so much. And this one here, this one is pretty much what will define and make you unique. It will set you apart from those you stand with and surround yourself with. And I promise you, if you learn the principles in this book, then life, with all its challenges, will never be an obstacle that you can't overcome.
Right.
So talk to us, Pastor, about the inspiration behind this.
we have also designed what is called the strategic assessment, the persona.
Right.
Everyone makes decision differently. And it's important for us to understand where we sit when we make decisions, whether we make it in our amygdala, that's the emotional aspect of our brains that is fueled by trauma and hurt and feelings, or we go to the prefrontal cortex, okay, and make decisions that are going to be lasting. Most times why New Year's resolution and all of those things don't work is because we make those in the emotional aspect of our brain, not in the prefrontal cortex. So I've designed an assessment, and that can be found on my website, where you can look at where do you naturally rest when you are making decisions. And it will also show you who you are as a strategist and help to position you to make more strategic decisions. So in this book, we talk about the power of one. Okay, the power of one is developed from research, quantitatively and qualitatively. Experience my own life has taught me, don't try to do everything at once. The power of one intention, one goal, one priority at a time, and move. Right? And the book helps us to understand that strategy is a life skill that every individual needs to have in order to win at life and accomplish your God-given ability.
You heard it from Dr. Greg Baldeo. And this book, The Everyday Strategist for the Everyday Person, it has a call to action, which is stated on page 127. It says, your journey doesn't end here, it deepens here. And I want to leave with you the strategist's creed. I'm not just a dreamer. I am a designer. I do not wait for clarity, I create it. I do not fear change, I build through it. I will lead myself with conviction, grace, and strategy. I'll use what's in my hand and trust that it is enough. I will build what lasts because I am an everyday
strategist. Yes.
Dr. Greg Baldeo, educator, mentor, friend, family man, pastor, evangelist, superintendent par excellence, educator, everything, strategist, entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's been my pleasure, and I know those of you who are viewing, you too enjoyed these 2 episodes with Dr. Greg Baldeo. I hope you've learned a lot. Unveiling is designed not only to share a story of success or a journey of success, but it's also meant for you to take away, these positive anecdotes, these positive lessons that can improve your own life and your life's journey. It's been my pleasure. I want to thank the production team so much for their hard work. My very funny, comedic production team, want to thank you so much for your hard work. On behalf of everyone here at Unveiling, I'm Adise Jonas Murphy, wishing you God's richest blessings.